There we are. Good morning. Happy Thursday, Detroit. Oh, I just covered up what I need to read. 6th Annual Detroit Commercial Real Estate Virtual Summit. This is not our 6th virtual summit in Detroit. We've had live events, and we'll have live events again coming up as soon as COVID's over. These are our sponsors: Walker & Dunlop, Newmark Knight Frank, Marcus & Millichap, Corfac, Right Size. Let me move my big head out of the way, and I'll read the rest. Meridian Design Build, Bernard Financial Group, Lutz Financial Services, Duffy & Duffy, good to see you, Craig, and Bercadia. This is us, REjournals. In case you didn't know this, we are in 17 states now. We have 6 publications. We were supposed to do 102 live events this year. Now we're going to end up doing like 200 events, but the bulk of them are on the web. We will be back to doing live events next year. So we're going to start this first panel, apartment market update and forecast, opportunities and challenges. We've got a wonderful moderator here. And I'm turning it over to you. See you all in 55 minutes.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning to all of our guests. Excuse me. Thank you for tuning in this morning for the 6th Detroit Commercial Real Estate Summit. It's an honor to be involved with this event again. After being involved the last 5 years, I can still vividly see that room full of all of our industry professionals just buzzing with conversations and back by that coffee table. I know we still really miss it, but your presence is felt. We can see you. As Mark alluded to, we also encourage you to chime in that messaging on the right so we can hear you. If you got any questions while we're going along, we'll do our best to answer them. My name is Charlie Krisfalusi. I'm the moderator, as we mentioned. I'm a mortgage lender with Walker & Dunlop. Walker & Dunlop is the nation's #1 Fannie Mae lender. We have been for 5 of the last 8 years, and we're also a top 3 provider for Freddie Mac and HUD. Given the panelists are going to bring perspectives from investment sales, owner operations, development, I just want to take a quick moment to give an update on where finance markets are. So overall, the industry continues to be very strong and resilient. We've got about $100 billion servicing portfolio. The default rate is less than 0.1%, and only a handful of those are multifamily related. Forbearance numbers, they've been declining since the start of the pandemic. They're on a 19-week decline with all those lending agencies. I think most importantly, during this pandemic, access to Fannie, Freddie, and HUD never went away. Actually, we saw the Fed step in and buy some commercial paper for a moment there, which having access to that capital, having our LTVs, loan to values stay where they were, not moving the underwriting box, allowed people to still transact. Based on the National Multifamily Housing Council, rental collections in October 2020 are only down 2.4% from where they were October 2019. I'll say that again. Our rents this month are down 2.4% compared to the rents in October 2019. People are still paying rent. Collections are still strong. Rates are near historic lows. We see rates in the low 2s to the mid 3s, which has allowed a record volume of refinance to get done, unlocking additional cash flow for a lot of borrowers. Mortgage lenders, truthfully, and our third-party providers, we're struggling with capacity and doing everything we can to keep up. All that glitters isn't gold with the rates, though. A lot of mortgages do have prepayment penalties. The lower the rates are today, the higher your penalty is going to be. But it still makes sense to be looking at everything in your portfolio for potential savings these days. Lastly, some potential headwinds we might face is that although those localized eviction moratoriums will steep, thankfully not law, have gone away, those underlying economic problems for the tenants haven't changed. So there's a lot of focus on what's going to happen with unemployment, if there's going to be another stimulus bill, how are things going to change after this election for the pace of the recovery. A lot of uncertainties on that side. All right, so with that, given all this adversity 2020 created, I think our panelists has never been so important to give us the feedback. I was actually joking with Kevin that felt like maybe our last few years we were getting a little repetitive, and he very accurately pointed out, well, that's because things were great and positive. So some things we're going to talk about today, the resurgence of investment sales and what it takes for an owner, a buyer to win that investment. We'll talk about how management companies are retaining tenants, employees, and profitability. We're going to get a status update on some of these Detroit developments that have been going on and where they're at with their leasing, forging ahead, and how they're attracting new residents. And we'll also take some questions from the audience where we can. So with that, I'm going to turn the attention back over to our panelists. If each of the four of you could give a 1-minute introduction of yourself, your company, and also one thing that you've been doing for fun during COVID to help break up the time. And Nina, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Perfect. Well, first things first, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this great panel. I just want to say, it's always been one of those opportunities for us just to find ways to network and come together. And I'm newer to Michigan, so it's a great opportunity to find people outside of work. My name, like you said, is Nina Davis. I am the Vice President of People and Culture at City Club Apartments. So we have the opportunity of building quite a few projects, but are working on ones out here in Detroit. And one of my favorite parts really about coming over into the multifamily industry and being newer to Michigan is just having the opportunity of really getting to know really great people along the way. One of the fun things that I've been doing from a COVID perspective is this year I had the opportunity of completely relocating. And I've relocated to many states before, but never during a pandemic. So to date, I still do not have a bed in my room, but I actually travel so much with my great organization that it's barely missed. I'm barely home. I've had the great opportunity of really driving, just creating morale and helping to keep people engaged during times like this while, they're having residents, fall from the illness, as well as friends and families. So people and culture has really been put to work. And I think that where you're talking about repetitiveness from a real estate standpoint, especially when it comes to HR work, I think this is probably the most testing it's been from an HR leadership.
All right, Kristen.
Good morning. I'm very grateful to join you all. My name is Kristen Diamond. I am with Heyman Company, where I serve as the Vice President of Multifamily Management. Heyman Company has close to a 60-year history in multifamily across the United States, with a large concentration of communities here in Michigan, obviously. You asked something fun that I've done during COVID, and that's that actually took some reflection, but it was actually going to a drive-in, which I had not done previously for many decades. And, COVID to see a movie has kind of forced us to explore drive-in. So that was a lot of fun. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. And I will actually give you a quick shout out for coming in hot right when we started. These are not easy virtually, so good job. Let's go ahead, Steven, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Steve Siegel. I'm the Vice President at Lutz Real Estate Investments. We're a multi-generational real estate firm that has acquired over $3 billion of real estate in the past 55 years. Today, we own assets in Ohio, Florida, and Michigan, and we're doing a large project in New Center, which I'm looking at my window at right now, which we'll discuss later. And we also have a sister mortgage banking firm called Q10 Lutz Financial Services. So something fun I've started during COVID was I picked up biking, which I had never really done. And I live downtown, so it was fun to go around the river and to Belle Isle and whatnot. But obviously the weather's going to change soon, so I'm going to try to start playing pond hockey with some friends so I can actually put my Sergei Fedorov jersey to work, but not be as good as him.
That's great. It sounds like fun. And Kevin.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Dillon. I've been in the industry now for 35 years. It scares me to say it. Started with the Dietz organization, then was with Hendrickson Partners. Stayed in the same office essentially, and then Hendrickson Partners sold to Berkadia. We're a commercial mortgage banking firm, top in the industry as it relates to Fannie, Freddie, and HUD, and what have you, as well as investment sales, which I am the senior managing director here in Detroit. Co-partner with Jason Krug, and we run the investment sales team for Michigan and Ohio here, and collaborate with our other Midwest teams as well. We are a national firm, so it's a great thing. Is there a lot of feedback, by the way? Just checking.
Yeah, I'm picking it up. If everybody could mute their mics, that should solve it.
Okay, great. So as it relates to I've been in the multifamily industry throughout my entire career. And fortunately, I've worked with each of the companies that are represented here on the board today. And my primary focus has always been Michigan with Ohio as well as a supplement. But now it's a focus point. So as it relates to the pandemic and what we've done, I had a great opportunity to spend a lot of time with my family. My daughters were in, my one from Chicago, the other two are in college now. So my wife and I are now empty nesters for the first time. And that was able to sneak in a little bit of golf in the evenings and the weekends this summer. But work has been all encompassing from Monday to Friday.
I think that's a great segue, Kevin. And thank you, everybody, for your introductions. You're saying you're super slammed and busy right now. So we're just going to start with you. And I think a lot of people on this call, we're transactionally driven. The title, the appraisers, the third parties, we all are so involved based on that activity. It's no surprise. We all felt the pain. It came to a screeching halt. But you're telling me that it's picking back up again. Why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of where those volumes are, where the pricings are at, and is there some type of COVID discount that's out there for buyers right now?
That was the big question back in April and May. Clients called from all over the country saying, we want whatever you have with a COVID discount. And deadpan was the answer on the phone. I just didn't say anything. Gave it a couple of seconds, said, we don't have one. And the reason being was pretty clear. But let me step back a little bit. In early October, or late March, early April, yes, transactions were challenging. People didn't want to go non-refundable. Nobody understood the moratorium on evictions. Nobody understood where people were going to get their paychecks. So there were some issues and some concerns. Turns out those concerns were not an issue, which was great. So we didn't see a big rise in delinquency. Yes, there was in some cases, but Michigan, I think, fared exceptionally well. The Midwest really did. And I can reference a conversation I had with Ben Sessa at Allen Associates. He said, we just recently did a 60,000 unit survey or 60,000 apartment units throughout 4 states in the Midwest, because collections are all above 98%. Occupancies are incredibly strong, above 95. Nobody's really had a major effect. So when it comes to the COVID discount, I would say it's just the opposite. It's more of a COVID premium. The reason being is we've had a number of groups that are buying assets. Everybody, multifamilies fared very, very well. So when we get into a marketing effort, we're getting an unprecedented number of signed confidentiality agreements and pricing as well. And that's primarily due to the fact that cap rates have been compressed a little bit further with the lower interest rates. So now we're down in the low to mid 5s. Amazing, because when I started my career, we all talked about 10 and 10 and 11 even in some cases. So it's completely different marketplace than what it was even a year ago from a cap rate perspective. So values have actually been more on the increase as opposed to the decrease as it relates to that. So I think the market's doing exceptionally well. Transaction volume is steady. I don't know the statistic as to how far up or down. I know second quarter we were all off. Third quarter got much better. Fourth quarter I think is going to be outstanding. So and so the first quarter of next year. So hopefully I answered your question, Charles. And
you did. I'll dive a little deeper into some of those points. And I just yesterday was reading with the Mortgage Bankers Association. They said 2021 is supposed to be a record year for investment sales. So clearly there's something spurring the sales, but I'll keep the focus on the buy side for a moment. You mentioned cap rates are continuing to go down. Collections are strong. Obviously that's keeping our values up really high. Where are you seeing the transactions happen? Are they in rural markets? Are they still in urban cores? Is it across the board? It's okay. Is there anything localized that has an impact still on the investment volume?
There are some impact areas as it relates to that. As it relates to the suburban markets, exceptionally strong. Everybody wants to be in those. When you have your higher end neighborhoods, your Novi, your Rochester Hills, your Ann Arbors, those are the first tier that everybody wants to go into. The second tier will be more of your workforce housing. And then an equal tier is downtown developments when you're in downtown Detroit. The part about downtown Detroit, it has a little bit of a softening. Residents that is, are a little unnerved by the rioting that went on over the summer. It'll take a little bit for some of that comfort to get back into position, but it didn't take a major hit, but there is a little bit of softening. And then you go from downtown Detroit to Midtown. Midtown's a little bit stronger. A little bit of a bump in the road there. I don't think it's insurmountable. And most of that's due to Wayne State not being fully on campus the way that we would like them to be. The Detroit Medical Center is doing exceptionally well, even through the pandemic. They did have parts of the hospital that had to really slowed down with surgeries and such. So there were some people that were laid off, not permanently. And then you've got other situations where, Chrysler's hiring 2,600 people right now, or FCA is. New center area is also, it's improving daily, but it's the growth in new center probably, I would say, has slowed down a little bit, just due to the fact that people are not as active in the downtown markets. They're just a little bit unnerved by the rioting this summer.
And keeping the focus on Detroit for a little bit here longer, given that's kind of where our panel wants to focus today. The downtown environment, there's some, it sounds like the taxes down in Midtown have made it really tough, not just for refinancing, but for sales. I know we're still looking for those trades to hit the market. Is there anything happening in Detroit that you can speak of that at least gives us a little bit of a hope to hang on to, that there is still transactional business being done that we can look to?
There are transactions being done. We had closed Alden Park Towers last year. The property did very well. That was a great transaction for both the buyer and the seller. That was a little over a year ago though. But they're doing well. They're getting their, it's an older building, but they're doing well. We have recently gone out with a 63 unit portfolio of 3 properties in Midtown, and we're going out with another 160, and those two portfolios will be combined as we launch next week. The early feedback from the 63 unit was exceptional. We've got, I would say, double-digit interest from buyers around the country. We have people from New York. We have people from Chicago. We have people from Florida, Washington, D.C. looking. They all understand the market, and they want to stay in these areas. They're going to be long-term where people are going to be. That also goes along back to energy savings, vehicles, and who's going to have what as it relates to that stuff. So, the downtown urban core is still going to be a strong thing for millennials and the next generation, which I don't even know the name of that one. And my daughters are in it, but I can't tell you the name.
So one last follow-up question. You mentioned this out-of-state activity. There's a lot of inquiries. Sounds like there's some pent-up demand. What are you seeing in terms of requests, and what is it taking for somebody to put their name at the top of that stack and have a potential to win the listing?
Do you mean to win the acquisition?
Correct.
I'm going to liken this to the portfolio we just took out over in Ann Arbor. We had over 200 signed confidentiality agreements. It's a record breaker. And it was a great experience for us and the seller. The other situation that we ran into when we went through the process had in excess of 15, I want to be careful on how I say the numbers, but in excess of 15 offers with a significant number in the best and final. We're getting the pricing that was anticipated, which again, increased a little bit from the prior year, and the interest was exceptional. I mean, it was exceptional. I don't know how else to put that. We had another portfolio in more of a working class type of neighborhoods, downriver and Macomb County. We had very strong interest in that portfolio as well. That was 600 units. And we ended up landing on a transaction that was in the 5%, sub 5% cap rate range. Everything that we're getting in that circumstance, there's some upside opportunity, some value add opportunity. And because of the value add opportunity, we'll get a little bit lower cap rate. So the interest in the market is exceptionally strong for buyers. It's exceptionally strong for sellers. I would say it's a seller's market. right now, and it's a great opportunity for sellers.
Well, I know that's definitely news to a lot of our ears, hearing that this is coming back with a vengeance and has a big 2021 ahead, hopefully. So I'm going to circle back later about the cap rates because I know there's probably a lot of interest on that. But I'm going to shift gears because for these properties to sell at these premiums, obviously they still need to be operated really well and having tenants that are still there and paying. So I'm going to switch the conversation over to Kristen for a little bit here. Kristen, your 30 years of experience, nothing prepares you for this but experience. There was no roadmap. Clearly, you guys have a multi-state portfolio, a ton of units. You have to worry about your employees and your residents as an essential worker. What were some of those first changes that you made when this all happened, and what's actually been the most successful changes that you think you've made at your communities across the portfolio?
Kristen, I muted your microphone. You're going to have to turn it back on. There's a blue button you'll have to push.
All right. Can you hear me? Perfect.
Yep.
No, that's a great question. So, I think many of us operators, we woke up those early days in March and April, and particularly our site teams who recognize how valuable they are on a day-to-day basis as it relates to operations. I think, they realized very quickly that not only are they valuable, but they're vital and essential. However, to your point, the robust standard, operating protocols or policies and procedures that we've had in place needed to be modified in order to operate, amidst a pandemic. And so it required, a collaborative approach, not just here at Heyman Company, but with other industry experts as well, to create an environment that was safe for our team members and obviously our residents, vendors, and contractors, and so forth. We also refocused our strategy very early on with an even greater emphasis on renewals. Specifically. So this is an area we've typically done very well. We will renew, beyond 55, sometimes 60%. But we shifted our strategy, not necessarily pushing for a lift in rental rates, but really pushing our renewal ratio closer to 75, 80% on average. Which helped us, preserve the rent roll and then, grow occupancy beyond what we were seeing, across the market. And then lastly, I would say, a pandemic is something that none of us have been through before. However, it was important for us not to lose focus of the fiduciary responsibilities that we have to our investors. And so, we collaborated and put together, a plan to reduce some of our standard operating expenses where that made sense, and really emphasized rent collections, which have been stronger than I think we all thought, they were going to be in the beginning, but it still required a tremendous amount of energy and attention to really understand, what the residents were going through and still going through, quite frankly.
So let me pause just for a second there on the rent collections. Do you have automated payments? Do you know about how many of your communities have that? Was it something that you had in place before, or did you need to quickly put it into place once this happened?
Fortunately, we had already automated the rent collections a couple of years ago. All of our properties have innovative portals, and our collections previous to COVID averaged about 94.3% online payments, which fortunately for us moving into the pandemic, we just obviously saw that continue. We actually seen it increase, closer to 97%. So Yes, that's a good question.
So I was looking a little bit at the data points yesterday on MBA's website, I believe, and they were talking about this technology adoption, online applications, virtual tours, as we just talked about the online payments and tenant portals to get manager requests. How much of this do you think is a necessity now? How much of this are you seeing an uptick in? Is it too late for owners to still put it into place? Just really in this technology side, is it truthfully it's just being forced upon us?
You're right. Is it too late? I would say, it's never too late. I think operators that, again, already had a lot of the portals in place, who had, virtual tour capability and or utilizes like a CRM queue to manage prospect leads. I do think that they had the advantage out of the gate, but without a doubt, I would encourage anyone who has not fully moved to that more electronic kind of platform for operations to do so now. It's not just the work orders, but also tracking resident request payments, and really through a lot of these technologies, including even social media, we have seen resident engagement has obviously changed, during this pandemic. And so we were positioned to really not miss a beat, and stay connected with our residents, still provide them maintenance service, and take care of our properties, in large part, I believe, to the technologies that we've had in place for some time now.
Well, I know this year has had to have been exhausting on you and your personnel, and then to not just maintain the safety of everybody, but then to have to stay focused on that bottom line like you are as well. I know for all of us, it's not missed. That energy and effort is not missed. So we talked about, you mentioned reducing expenses. I think that's something we're all looking to do. I hit on the fact that, clearly refinancing is easy. That's where my mind fits. But what are some other operational things that people can do to reduce expenses? And maybe what are some expenses that have actually gone up as a result of this? If you could give us a little insights there.
Sure. So, as far as reducing expenses, we took each line of our GL, and we just took another look. And, let's use landscaping as an example. We all have landscaping contracts in place for our communities, and the scope of those contracts obviously do look different from community to community. But, where we have typically taken a very healthy approach to fertilizations, the number of cuts, things like that. This was an opportunity for us to take a step back and say, maybe we don't need 26 cuts. Maybe we can get away with 23 cuts this year. Maybe instead of 4 fertilizations, we looked at doing 2, and, doing that incrementally across the board. Really repairs and maintenance, unit turn cost is where we were able to see the most significant bulk of savings, because we also were not seeing the volume of work orders. And so, to keep our teams obviously employed and working, there were some things that we pulled in-house temporarily, such as painting, things like that bottom line netted favorably for us. As far as expenses that have gone up, a little bit, I would say, on the marketing spend, not too terribly much, but I would say that, particularly since most advertising now is done, online, we did tweak some packages, obviously to just position, certain properties, perhaps, higher on the page than others. But, I at least so far, even now, just like looking at snow contracts, we're finding a lot of our expenses are remaining the same, or in some cases going down slightly. And that could just be how, we've, communicated with our contractors and vendors and, wanting to try to continue to reduce expenses for the rest of the year if we can, where it makes sense for the properties.
Thank you. One of the stats that jumped out to me, and I know we're talking about all these ways to improve it from the operation side, and that all helps with retaining tenants, but I did see a stat that the concessions did start to spike up a little bit this last month. It seems like you got to do what you got to do to keep them there. But once we have our tenants, we know that the collections stay strong during their lease term, right? So, that's not uncommon. If it's something you're experiencing, we're seeing it across the data out there. And I think this is a good ability for me to switch my conversations over to Nina for a moment, because this retention of tenants right now is so important. I know that Kristen gave us a good prep of how we can find ways to do that operationally, but what are some ways that you're finding you're not just building these apartments, you're building a community, you're finding a way to not just retain tenants, but attract new ones as this new property that we've all been watching downtown is finally starting to lease up. So with that, if you could just give us a little bit of an update as to where City Club Detroit is at in its process and some of those things you're doing to differentiate yourself to attract and retain tenants at a time like this.
Absolutely. Thank you. So when it comes to our Detroit project, currently it's still construction slash lease up. Right now we're at about 30% leased up. So what's making us different and creating those differentiators across our competitors is really just creating a lot of mixed use spaces where it's not just the residents that are able to come in and enjoy it. Of course, they're paying a premium rate, and you're seeing that lovely project come together and be a part of that. There's a lot of things that are going on in there as far as being able to the residents able to pick whatever finishes they would like to have. So really trying to find customization of not only just their rental unit, but then again, the resort class amenities that are outside of it. I think where COVID has really put us in a position of retaining people and retaining our tenants and our residents is really just from that opportunity of them not having to leave that space. So creating that environment where it's both from a social perspective, but then a safe environment where, it's locked down, it's making them feel very safe and secure at a time where a lot of people don't feel safe and secure, or they don't have the opportunity to have those mixed spaces available. So whereas the Detroit City Club is going to have a restaurant that's located in it. There's other within our portfolio that have like a pet friendly little shopping area or a nice corner store that's right attached to it. So the resident will only have a key fob. They never even have to walk out of the front door to go into those areas, but also for the neighborhood in which our portfolios sit. They have the opportunity of utilizing those spaces too. So for our Sky Club lounges, a resident or a prospect or somebody who's just in the neighborhood, if they're looking to put together an event space, our concierge creates that lifestyle service that then can serve the entire neighborhood, putting together different social programming that allows that opportunity for people to really mix and mingle amongst their like residents without always having to invite the outside world into it. As we go into and we're talking about different generations, everybody has different things that they're needing from something, and our communities are really creating that type of space, that vibe, so to speak, that allows people to really feel as though they're a part of something larger than themselves without ever even having to change out of their flip-flops or their comfy clothes, because we all know that a lot of people are working from home now. So providing that luxury opportunity without leaving.
Well, this is really exciting because I know a lot of our eyes have been on the development being ground up, right? Having ground up construction in Detroit. I know John's been on a ton of panels already and talked about, this is one of these first few projects that is groundbreaking, not just in the sense of its construction type, but the way it's being done with its financing. And so we stayed so focused on that. And now you're seeing the colors and the amenities and this, what's really coming. If you haven't looked at any of the pictures online yet or been to the pre-leasing site, I mean, it's a gorgeous product, and I highly recommend you guys taking a look. And I think that's one of these ways we've talked about attracting those tenants and eyes. So it almost creates another question though, if you've got this luxury resort class amenity style while we're in a pandemic. So 30% leasing, I think, speaks to itself. It sounds like the move-ins are outpacing move-outs in other spots, and we still have room for these tenants in downtown where the units were so needed. So I know developers, you had to forge on and keep going through a time where we all had to stop. And it's really encouraging and great to hear that you are leasing up. So you had mentioned a Sky Club lounge. I don't really know if there's any, I can think of one or two rooftop bars or patios in Detroit. That's really not a thing we do here. Can you get into that just a little bit further and let us know what that is?
Absolutely. So just taking that normal, a pool that maybe a hotel type would have and elevating it to the top. So a lot of different properties within the portfolio have the Sky Club Lounge, and luckily our Detroit one is one of them, where you'll be able to, I always call it, take small sips and small bites instead of calling it happy hour, right? Small sips and small bites that allow opportunities for people to really socialize there. And especially, I was just in Kansas City last week. We had a grand opening there for one of our projects, and people really love the opportunity of being in an open space, being able to socially distance, catching a little bit of sun, and then having an opportunity to really just be a part of their residential community. So meeting new residents that they've never seen before. We invited, our neighbors and our competitors from the other places so they could come check it out too. But the Sky Club is just that. It's really just a lounge in the sky that, think about your airport type of feel. And some of them have pools. Other of them just have those cabana style layouts. So people can really just suntan and lounge out and have a place with their friends that's in open air. So if they want to remove their mask and still practice that social distancing, they can and feel comfortable doing so.
Microphone.
Thank you. You mentioned Kansas City, and that makes sense because you're a little further south in the weather and whatnot. Is there anywhere else you've taken this business plan in the Midwest or in another market? Are you looking at doing another one here in Michigan or in Detroit?
Well, everything is on the table, but we haven't moved west just yet. So right now, just focusing on our Chicago, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati markets, and I'm missing Louisville. So don't let me miss Louisville out there. They're just great opportunities, different ones. So having garden style communities and then urban inner city communities. And eventually we're looking to kind of navigate away from our garden style, because to your point, those are easy sellers. Everybody wants to be in the suburbs, and we're really trying to make ourselves our own competitors and build upon that without poaching upon ourselves. So there's always room for growth, but I think in those inner city ones, it allows for a lot higher occupancy, higher rates, and higher returns at the end of the day.
Well, at a time where we're going to be spending more and more of our time on our homes, as you mentioned, that having that type of product available, I'm sure will be sought after a lot. So we're getting tighter on time. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I'll just draw attention to the group about that. And I'm going to use this as a segue that, this downtown, you're right in the central business district. You can demand these high rents. There's a little more walkability. The project was able to be built ground up. Stephen, you got a whole different type of product going on. You're only a short ride of Woodward, but very different community, very different construction type. Thank you as well for your patience as we finally get around to asking you about your development here. So why don't you let us know about what you're working on there in Newtown?
Right. Well, everyone was saying such interesting things. So, and very insightful. New Center, we bought our property about two and a half years ago. It was called the Albert Kahn Building. We will call it the Kahn Building. It's going to be about 200 units. And you cannot build a property like this today. Well, you could, but you wouldn't really be able to make a ton of money on it like other properties from the ground up. So we got it at what we felt was a very good basis. And at the time, New Center, especially around Grand and Woodward, still a lot of vacant storefronts and whatnot. But as rents have risen downtown and in Midtown, and commercial rents have gone up, a lot of small entrepreneurs have moved their businesses north just a couple miles. And Henry Ford is doing a lot of work, and they built a new cancer center, obviously, and we're right near Wayne State. So we liked a lot of the metrics in the area. We foresaw, which is slowly happening, and actually the pace is picking up, a lot of growth there, both in terms of residents moving there and in terms of businesses, which is also key. So leasing, we're going to start leasing around next month. The floors 7 through 11 will deliver in by February. The rest of the building and the amenities will deliver in April. We're going to have we're also going to have a rooftop actually, and we have great views of the Fisher Building, which the platform has did a great job with. And we're going to have a yoga studio, a spin studio, a golf simulator on our second floor game room. So we're going to have a lot of resident interaction, fitness studio, community room, and bike storage, and a pet spot. So we have a lot of amenities, and as City Club does a really good job with this as well. There's somewhat of an amenities arms race to attract new residents, not just in Detroit, but all over the country. So, we feel very comfortable with the area. Obviously, some tenants are left this past summer, but what I hear, I live in Lafayette Park, actually, this area is entirely full. I know in my building, they're at like a slight clip under 95% occupancy. So I think people are coming back. When I'm around here, when I'm in New Center, there's new coffee shops that I've opened that are pulling tons of people. So the type of tenant we want and the type of environment we want that we saw 2 years ago is happening. We're excited about that.
When your boots on the ground, Detroit resident knowledge is firsthand lets us know, because I think from sometimes out just a few miles north, we're wondering, are people even going out anymore in the city? Right? And so it sounds like that's no problem at all. You also mentioned during our pre-call, you reverse commute, and sometimes that being a little further north gives that little bit more of an option for different residents sometimes than your downtown resident, where you're able to straddle both.
Yeah.
So you were talking about all these amenities that are going in, really, making it a brand new product, but this is a historic renovation, right? So you're preserving this building. You have to keep it a certain way. It's a very different type of construction. Can you let us know a little bit about the things you faced during that, and what type of rents you're expecting? Is there any affordability at this product?
Right. Well, that is the challenge with Detroit real estate. I think, and we talked about this in our conversation before, when you have a historic building like the Con, it basically costs more to rehab it than to build ground up. And the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan has excellent incentive programs, both in terms of tax credits and tax abatements, which we utilize and had to utilize on this deal. And many people have to utilize in Detroit. That's just the name of the game. The costs are so much to redo these beautiful old buildings. And I wrote an article about this for one of the REjournals. You need these incentives to make the numbers work, because if you wanted to, there's also the fact of the labor pool, a lot of it left in 2008 and never come back. And these are historic properties, and they require technical expertise to redo them. I mean, for example, in our building, it's historic, so we use historic tax credits, which was key to the financing of the property and making it work. But you can't change anything to the outside. So we had to redo these beautiful bronze window frames, which were hand cleaning. And then because it was, it's single pane glass from back in the day, but we found a particular glass maker in Japan who will do double pane glass, which is more energy efficient and better for the tenant. And we got them to make it fit into this vintage one panel frame. So that's just one example of the challenges associated with a historic rehab. And yes, the state requires an affordability component, which makes sense. So 20% of the units will be affordable at 80% of the AMI of the area. And I forgot what was your other question along with the challenging nature of the historic.
I'm rattling a couple, but
yeah,
that's those types of stories about these projects. I mean, those are the things that I'd love to hear, and it's what really it's that sweat equity. It's not just putting in new windows. You got to go and source specific things, and those are fun stories with these types of projects. Obviously, they got a history, and they're going to have another one. And congrats to getting that built. 2 years in the making is. Glad to hear you're pre-leasing now and able to mix current amenities with historic look. And it's pretty cool. One other thing that I know you're in development, you're in acquisitions, that project is long out of your mind, I'm sure, and you're looking forward. What are you looking for? Are you an active buyer? What markets are you keeping your eyes open in? How can we help draw attention to these next opportunities in the years ahead?
Right. We've historically been value add buyers or development. So, a lot of our acquisition views right now are predicated on some of the incredibly attractive affordable financing you can get. As you know, you can borrow from HUD if you have the equity that's patient enough to develop, at 3.25 on a 40-year AM. So you're paying a little, around 5% debt constant for 40 years, and you're letting inflation compound your rent growth, hopefully. So we're looking at land sites. We're looking at some stuff in Michigan. Typically, we don't buy in Michigan, but we are very interested in secondary Midwestern markets. Nina's firm is in them a lot. She mentioned Cincinnati. I really like some places in Iowa, Madison, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh. These are places with a little more value-added potential, less institutional buyers, because we're not going to compete with core return capital. And, the yields are a little bit higher in these markets. I think Detroit, the yields are very low. So if you, it's good for us, when we stabilize, but if you've owned your property for a while, as Kevin mentioned, you can get a really good multiple on it. And I think the buying opportunity from a value add perspective for a lot of the stuff we look at may have passed in the city, but there's plenty of stuff in and around Michigan that still has a value add component. But like I said, we're mostly looking in the secondary markets in the Midwest.
And that's for both ground up with land and rehab opportunities?
Correct.
Great. Well, the one part of that jumped off to me was patient equity. I think that's something that obviously we might have gotten a little impatient the last couple of years, maybe forced upon us here going forward. So we're kind of closing in on the last minute. I wish we had a little bit more time to circle back on some of the topics each of the panelists talked about. I don't see any questions over in the right-hand chatter, but overall, there's no doubting we all lived it. This year was tumultuous, but I feel like based on all these conversations, everybody found their way. We've navigated. We're moving on. Kevin, I know you've got one more comment you might want to throw in.
You know what? It's looking at the chat, there are a couple of questions there that I thought were pretty insightful. So if you didn't see him, Charles, you might have to go to the chat thing on the.
I was at the bottom, and it's.
Oh, yeah, there.
You want
cost
to
involved with COVID cleansing? That's a good question.
Well, yeah, and that was for Kristen. What kind of cost is involved in the COVID cleansing? Now, I've seen it in financial statements.
So typically, we have increased the number of cleaning treatments for each of our buildings. So, we have seen, probably about a 20% increase in general building cleaning, as well as amenity areas. Obviously, there have also been costs as it relates to PPE for our teams, for our guests, for our residents. And again, in all of our amenity areas, as well as additional, just cleaning supplies. So it's definitely, something that we've noticed as well operating through this year. And we're planning for moving into next year.
A small funny side note to that, one of our clients owns 60,000 units out in Denver. They had a whole bunch of PPE stuff come into the Denver office, and they were shipping it to all their properties around the country. And they go, "What do we do?" And the owner, Bob, looks at him and goes, "Write dirty diapers on every box." So nobody steals it along the way. So the other question is, there's two. One was regarding what leasing rates that Larry had asked, and I can't answer that. That would either go to Nina or Stephen. I think that's for the downtown new project.
And I'll throw a little protection out there. I know that both Nina and Stephen are not as tight on the numbers, so they may need to default to one of their leasing managers, and we'll make sure we get exact numbers back to you, Larry. So unless you guys can answer it right now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that's not necessarily where your expertise are.
We appreciate you saved us on that. That's not necessarily our expertise, but I'll definitely get those numbers to get that out.
Great idea.
I'll send you his contact info. So with that, we're just a little bit past our time. I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to Mark, and thank you all again so much. That was really valuable, and I'm sure everybody will have a lot of follow-ups with you directly and individually. Thank you.
Great job, Charles.
Where's Mark? I got to know where Mark, you're going to moderate one of these?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Menzies is in Chicago. He's probably watching this going, "Hey, I'd like to be there." We all want to be there. I'm Todd, but no big deal. We're all the same. We got 20 some employees and we're interchangeable. It's good to be here. This was a fantastic panel, y'all. We're going to come back. Hang on. Before you all leave this room, people that are watching online and panelists, I'm going to put up a link here real quick. So this will take you back to our lobby. You found our lobby if you found this event, but go back in there, click on the next event. Make sure you close this window out because it just eats up your browser to have multiple windows open. So go back to that lobby, find panel 2. You can see bios of all the panelists, and I believe you can connect with them on LinkedIn. This is awesome. So for those of you that want to connect with those speakers, all of their LinkedIn buttons are on there. Click them, connect. Let's all stay connected. Have a wonderful winter holiday. We'll be back in Detroit when, well, I don't know, soon, when COVID's over. See you all. Thank you.